3BC.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to BC. That's Three Black Chicks. I am your host, Joy. And today we have a special guest, and that's Naja Hall. She is the creator of blendedandblack.com, the website, the podcast, and the business. And we're talking to her today about pulling a different thread with the coronavirus. We haven't talked a lot about the Rona, as we call it, just on purpose because we have enough of that information. But this is important information and a thread that hasn't been pulled. So Naja is going to talk to us about blended families and visitation between divorced or separated parents during this time. Naja, hello, welcome.
Hi, Joy. Thank you so much for having me.
Also, let me point out too, Naja is a Memphis girl. She's living in New York.
Hey.
Hey, Memphis. And she's living in New York, but right now, since she's quarantined in Dallas. So she's actually the perfect person on top of the business and her life already. She's actually the perfect, this is a perfect time to talk about this. Can you tell us a little bit about the website, the podcast, business before we get into nuts and bolts?
Okay. So I started blendedandblack.com, Facebook community, website, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. I started it around 2015 because I had been in a relationship with a person that was divorced with children. And for the life of me, I had never heard of, seen, been anywhere near the type of experiences that were happening in my life as a result of this love relationship. I mean, I was straight up confused. You know, my mom and dad are still married. His parents are still married. And by the way, that person I was in a relationship with, I went on to marry, and we're still married to this day. But that there were some things that were happening that I just could not wrap my mind around. You know, the divorce is the death of a family unit, and I did not know that I was walking into a group of people that were still grieving something. And so it hit me hard. Had I known then what I know now, I would handle so many things differently. And so I built a community for people that are either themselves in the middle of the blended family drama, they're thinking about doing it, or they just want to find a different way. I started my podcast, I Know I'm Crazy, with Naja Hall, to speak to family toxicity, family trauma, divorce, marriage, step parenting, co-parenting, all that good stuff, mental health, especially, just to speak to these issues that, to try to give it some honey, because they're very sour topics that I talk about. And I find that people don't want the medicine without some of the sweet. So I kind of add the sugar to it. Yes.
So, what should people be thinking about during this time? I know it has to be difficult. It's difficult time sharing kids, period. Um,
Yes.
it's not as difficult for me. My daughter's father's in Brooklyn. Um, I think it's difficult anytime the child leaves the house, right? Like you're like, oh,
Yeah.
sad. I'm not used to, for an extended period, right? I'm not used to my life without that person, the kids' schedules or whatever, right? I mean, then you start risky business, start the risky business. Like that's phases at
Hmm.
business and you in your draws. But eating whatever you not having any kid food. How during this time is trickier because you don't know who that person is around. You don't know, the partner when you send them to them, maybe, or there's no way of knowing everything.
Yeah. And that's the thing about co-parenting. And when we split up, whether we're married or we're just, we were in a love relationship, or if you were never with a person, if you produce a child and you are not in the same household with that other person, that means your child, not you. That means your child has two different households that they're going to get influenced by, that they're going to almost live in, that they're going to be a part of, and that they need to be considered in. No matter what your relationship is with that other parent, hopefully it's a good one and you don't need somebody like me and my podcast and everything that I offer in your life. Hopefully you get along hunky dory and you don't have these types of problems. But that's the one thing that I see a lot of co-parents having conflict with is they're trying to run a blended family like they would run a traditional family. But this ain't that. It's two totally different things. We have a level of control over our child and our co-parent when they are in our home. But when we break up or they move into their own space, none of that is our dominion. We have no control whatsoever. Unless you have a court order telling you that you can control who your child meets and what time they go to bed and what time y'all talk, all that stuff is up to the other parent and how they want to raise their child. That's why it's so hard, Joy. Because if you break up with somebody or you're not in a relationship with them, chances are it's because you didn't agree on some stuff anyway. And so now you got to find to agree about a whole human being.
And and just speaking for self, we realize that my daughter's father and I realize that we want the same thing, but he's coming from over here. I'm coming from over here. And we just have
Yep.
two different approaches, but we're trying to get to the same place. So we oftentimes have to come back to that and remember, hey, we're trying to get to the same place. We want the same thing. We want the best for Addison. Addison comes first. So we have to remember that. And that's not always easy, because that person, they get on your nerves.
Let me add this. I was talking to one of my influencer friends, and she said her name is Kate Chapman. She's such a great person in the blended family realm. And she said, Naja, when I was going through my divorce and me and my ex, we were always into it with each other. But we had to sit down one day and realize that aside from the other person, nobody in the world loved this child more than we did. She said, I had to accept the fact that my co-parent, my ex-husband, loved this baby the same, if not more than me. And that really put a stop to a lot of the small conflict that they were having. And they were able to talk to one another as humans, as co-parents, as people, like you said, that are in the business of co-parenting. Because
Sure.
if you've done your job well, you say, hey, right, you say, this is a business, honey. Our business will be successful when we see this baby meet some of her own personal life goals and be able to live a life independent of us. Until then, y'all are partners.
Sure. And what do we think, or what do you think would be a good way to ease some of the tension, I guess? I don't want to say tension, but ease some of the, I guess, tension, or I'm trying to come up with the right word. Not tension. I got stuck. Discomfort.
Tension is a good word.
It's discomfort too. Discomfort. Tension is on the higher end of the spectrum, but maybe just a discomfort with shuffling the kid back and forth right now during this self-quarantine time. What can we do? Because there's a lot of discomfort on every level.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to parents having to shuttle kids back and forth during this time?
First and foremost, if you are a parent and if you're in a semi-decent co-parenting relationship, meaning you can have a conversation with the other parent, then y'all got to be real honest about how you are recognizing and honoring sheltering in place, because everyone's not doing it correctly. Do you have the same principles on what sheltering in place is? Some people are okay with going in groups of 10 because they think they won't get corona. We all know that this is not true. The 10-person rule is just so that they lower the probability of the people that get it. You know what I mean? So if you see that your co-parent is not aligned with how they're handling shelter in place, I would say you should be very afraid. You should be nervous. You have a conversation with them. If they have people in and out of their house, if they are a high-risk worker, meaning if their partner, let's just say your child's father is a nurse and she works in the corona unit, you're probably going to be skeptic about sending your child to a visit with dad. And this is where you have to have a real conversation with dad, because some parents are pushing for visitation even though they themselves or their partners or somebody in their household is a person that's been at risk. This one, you got to use your better judgment as a parent, because I had this event online. 150 people came, called Corona and Co-Parenting, and I had 13 different family law attorneys on there. every single one of them said that they would advise their client to honor the visitation as an attorney client, but they themselves as mothers and fathers and co-parents said they're like, but if I knew that I was sending my child to a red zone, I would just probably rather take the contempt charge. And so I'm telling you all parents out there, you got to use your better judgment. If you have gone to court 50 times last year because you are withholding visitation, this ain't going to really go too well for you when you get your butt dragged back into court, because the judge is going to see that you've used this pandemic, this deadly pandemic, to further your efforts to keep that child away. But if you have a clean track record and you are genuinely concerned, then you send that other parent an email and you say this, grab a pen, y'all. You say, and whatever date you started observing quarantine, you say, as of March 1st, for example, my family and I have been observing the shelter in place. I have verifiable proof that we have been quarantining. We have not left the home. The children are not in any sort of danger. Are you willing and able to provide verifiable documentation that you and those in your household have also not been exposed and are limiting exposure? This is what you need to send them. You got to say, and if they don't respond, don't send the kids.
That's perfect. That's actually perfect.
Yes. If they don't respond, or if they respond saying, if they respond saying, yes, I have done it, and you can say, I am willing to submit you proof, and you can give your proof, and you got to be honest. Because if you just went on an Easter celebration the other day, or you still throwing birthday parties, then no, you are not honoring that.
And there's a lot of people doing that. There's a lot of people doing that, and a lot of us. A lot of us in particular doing it. I'm not. I mean, this 3BC is about Black folks. Black women in particular, right? And we are doing this, and we cannot be mad at the police. We can be mad at the police for lack of parity, but we can't be mad at the police because we're still wrong. You know what I mean? We still need to disperse.
I live in New York City, so 40% of the corona cases are out of New York City, where I live. Thank God we were able to leave. But I just saw a video the other day, some Hasidic Jews in Brooklyn, 300 of them gathered in the street. You know what the cops did? Like they used to do us back in the day, Black folks. They came out with them water hoses and them dogs, and they sprayed those people.
Get on back.
So if they bring these things back out for y'all, don't say nothing.
Right. And last but not least, before we get out of here, talk about your situation. You are holed up in Texas right now because of this situation. So talk about that before we wrap up, because that is definitely interesting. And also, you mentioned before that you're fortunate to be able to do it. Not everybody would be, like, oh man, they might not be mobile. Their job might not be mobile. They, or remote or whatever. So talk about that experience and how long y'all have been there since when?
Oh, so we came here actually to visit with my stepkids for the last weekend of their spring break. So I only bought 3 pairs of underwear to Texas, 3 pairs of clothes. I was not planning on being here going on to almost 2 months now. By the time we leave here, it would have been 2 months. We had to cancel all our flights because they told us New York is closed and don't come back. And thankfully, the co-parenting situation is such that my husband was able to communicate with his co-parent and say, hey, listen, we are strictly observing sheltering in place. Me and my wife are able to work from home. We're able to do the homeschooling and stuff. And it was agreement between co-parents. And of course, my husband and I talked about all that before any of this went down. And we were, we're fortunate enough to still be able to be here and get this extra time with the kids. And we know for a fact that they're safe. And we're going to return them back to their other home in one piece. So yeah.
It sounds like an adventure.
It's been a heck of an adventure, Joy. It really is.
I'm
to
sure.
Put it lightly. Yeah.
I'm sure. Like 3 days turned into 2 months. So
yeah.
But y'all are weathering the storm. You're holding it out. I really appreciate the advice you've given to people, because I know this is a hard topic, especially it's a hard topic in general, but it's a hard topic. The corona situation just compounds it. So, and it's hard to,
Yeah.
if it's hard to trust the other person, that even though they love them, you do remember they love the kids as much as you do, but it's still hard to trust other people to do things the way you
Yes.
would. And that's hard.
Yeah.
So I'm sure some people out there could really use that advice. So thank you again for joining us
Thank you
today.
for having me.
Yes, and we'll have you back again. We'll talk some more about Blended and Black and Fabulous and all that stuff.
All right. Thank you, Joy.
All right.
3BC, recorded at Kudzukian Studios. Directed, produced, and distributed by Kudzukian.
Join the conversation at facebook.com/3BC.